Good morning, 5A and 5B. Please open your math book to page 677. This is lesson 11, and it is on adding mixed numbers. Now, we did this in lesson 10 using models. Now you're going to learn to do it without the models. But I want to go over a few things with you before we start this lesson that will make it great for you. Now, I want to remind you of the difference between a proper fraction and an improper fraction, right? Remember this? A proper fraction, the numerator is less than the denominator, and it's fine to stay that way. For an improper fraction, the numerator is bigger than the denominator. Now, if we had that fraction, 9/7, we need to fix it, and it would become 1 2/7. Remember that? So if a fraction is improper, that means the numerator is bigger than the denominator, and you have to make it a mixed number, 1 1/3. Okay? Another thing I want to remind you about is how to simplify. Okay? Please remember that you must always simplify when you have the chance. When you finish your problem, look at it. Let's suppose you finished and you had this fraction, 3/6, and you've done a lot of work and you're proud of your answer. But it's not correct unless you simplify it. What number can both the numerator and the denominator be divided by? They can both be divided by 3, so this becomes 1/2. That's the simplified answer. Let's do another one. Let's suppose you had the fraction 12/20. It is not correct unless you simplify it. What can both numbers be divided by? Well, they can both be divided by 2, right? So then it becomes 6/10. We have 6/10, but you know what? That's not simplified either. This can also be divided by 2. 6 can be divided by 2 and 10 divided by 2. So then we end up with 3/5 as the simplified answer. Okay? Please remember to simplify. Now today you're going to be adding fractions that are mixed numbers, but I want to remind you how to add just a regular fraction where the denominators are not the same. So let's suppose this was a few lessons back, probably about a month ago, 3/4 plus 1/8. Now I'm looking at that and we have different denominators, and I'm thinking of the least common denominator. If I look at it, I say, oh, it's 8. So I'm going to go ahead and put the 8 for both fractions. The 8 is already there in the bottom fraction, so that stays as 1/8. But then we have 4 times 2 is 8, so we take that 2 and move it to the top, and it becomes 3 times 2 is 6. So then we have 6/8 plus 1/8 becomes 7/8. I'm just reminding you about getting a common denominator and how to get that equivalent fraction. Let's do one more like that. Let's add 1/5 plus 2/20. Okay, we're looking at that and we say, okay, what is the common denominator? Well, I'm going to go ahead and write the fraction. The common denominator is 20. So I'm going to put 20 on both fractions. I'm going to leave the 2/20. Then we have 5 times 4 is 20. 1 times 4 is 4. Okay, so now we're going to add that up. 4/20 and 2/20 equals 6/20. But look, can this be simplified? Yes, it can. Both numbers can be divided by 2. So this becomes 3/10. Now, when you add a mixed number, Now, in your book, they show you a certain method, and you can certainly look on page 677 and 678. But I'm going to show you how I learned and how your parents learned, because I'm just trying to make your life easier. You know, I'm nice like that. So let's try it. Just watch. If we have 3 5/9 plus 4 2/9. We look to the fraction part of the mixed number first. 5/9 and 2/9. Well, they have a common denominator, so all we have to do is add. 5/9 and 2/9, that's 7/9. And then 3 plus 4 is 7. 7 7/9. It's not always going to be that easy, because sometimes you're going to have to get the common denominator. It might be improper, but this is basic. Add the fraction, then the mixed number. Here's another one. 4 1/5 plus 5 11/15. Okay, so let's look at this. Now, we see we don't have a common denominator, so we're going to get that. We're basically ignoring those whole numbers, 4 and 5 right now. We're just focusing on the fraction part. So the common denominator of 5 and 15 is 15. So I'm going to put a 15 on both. And this 11/15 does not change. 5 times 3 is 15. 1 times 3 is 3. So now I'm going to add the 3/15 and the 11/15, and I'm going to get 14/15. And then 4 plus 5 is 9. Okay, that's the answer. It can't be simplified. Look at this one. 2 1/2 plus 4. Here we have a whole number without a fraction, then we have a mixed number. In this case, remember, you always do the fraction part first, so that would be 1/2 plus nothing is 1/2. 2 plus 4 is 6. Does that make sense? 8 2/5 plus 4 1/10. Okay, let's look at the fraction. We're going to get the common denominator. We see it's 10, so I'm going to put a 10 for both. 10 times 1 is 10. Well, this one isn't changing. 5 times 2 is 10. So 2 times 2 is 4, right? 4 plus 1 is 5/10. 8 plus 4 is 12. But oh, look, we can reduce this. 12 5/10. We can reduce the fraction part. We can divide both the top number and the bottom number by 5. And it becomes 12 1/2. When you simplify the fraction, it doesn't affect the whole number, okay? It does not. So, I want to show you one more. So, let's suppose you had 4 3/7 plus 7 6/7. Now, if we look at this one, we see we have the common denominator, don't we? We have the 7, so that's not going to change. And when we add it up, 3/7 and 6/7, we get 9/7. Okay, before we add in the whole number, we're going to fix this improper fraction, 1 2/7. You see that? 1 2/7. Then we're going to add it to the 4. And then we're going to add it to the 7. And then it's the 1 1/7. It becomes 12 1/7. I know that may have been hard to see along this whole way, but we had 1 2/7. Then we added in the 4 and the 7. It was 1 2/7 here. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to work on page 679 and 680. Take a photo and send in. I want to see you add, I want to see your answers where you have added these mixed numbers. Work it out, take your time, read the problems. And we're going to take 2 days on this because I want you to really get to know it and follow it and be careful. And just know that this is Miss Spafford saying, I hope to see you soon.